there is considerable skepticism about the question of rebirth. There are also questions about what exactly is reborn and what happens to the existing current life experience and capabilities developed in a lifetime before death. There remains, then, also the mechanisms involved. There is a long history reviewing the question of life after death and the question of rebirth, with worldwide focus and spanning virtually all cultures and time periods. There are legends or stories about locations where the dead souls go, either permanently or for some period of time until they are reborn. Some individuals who have been pronounced clinically dead and then were revived have reported their experiences and their new understanding of their role on earth. Some religions doctrinally reject the concept of rebirth on the grounds that it conflicts with their view of salvation and the attainment of heaven after judgment and bodily resurrection. Others hold that at some point the soul is not reborn into this world, but potentially into other worlds or domains as the soul's development progresses. We are focused here, however, on the specific question of rebirth in the context of the earthly life and process. Scientists have also begun to weigh in on the subject. In particular, the University of Virginia's School of Medicine set up a division of Perceptual Studies, DOPS, to study this and similar esoteric questions. They set about developing a database of cases of apparent rebirth or transmission of specific capabilities across the life-death barrier into a new life. The database comprises more than 2,500 cases which were researched. Some could not be fully vetted and validated, but several hundred were carefully reviewed and found to be solid. Some of these cases were written up in books or in medical journals at the time they were published. Cases of musical or other forms of artistic or mathematical prodigies, such as the frequent cited case of Mozart, come up from time to time. These represent cases of highly developed skills. More frequent, however, are cases of ordinary individuals without special skills. In many of these cases, the original memories stemmed from an individual who had died prematurely or violently. The mechanism here is unknown, of course, but it shows that somehow mental or vital or even physical memories were held together sufficiently and were able to penetrate into a child, either through a process of rebirth or possibly through one of the child picking up the formation from the mental, vital, or subtle physical domain in which it was still highly organized. A large percentage of these cases involve events that occurred within a couple of years, thus lending credence to the organized mental, vital, physical formation simply being adopted rather than a specific case of rebirth. However, those that involve longer periods of time would tend to favor rebirth as the cause. Some children with very specific memories actually identify themselves as the prior, now deceased, individual. As a general proposition, of those cases that were documented well, the vast majority involved young children between ages 2 and 4 with specific special knowledge, memories, or capacities that were unrelated to anything in their lives or in any development they had undergone in the current lifetime. The memories tended to fade as they aged for the most part, although some cases involved adults under hypnotic trance who exhibited language and detailed knowledge of dialects and languages unknown to them and of places far distant in time and space. One thing that is proven here, however, is that in certain instances, physical, vital, or mental capacities or characteristics can translate from one life to another. There are even incidents of specific birthmarks appearing physically on the body of the newborn child. Most of these cases, as noted, are related to ordinary people with more or less ordinary capacities. This does, however, open up a pathway to understand the potential action of a highly advanced and developed psychic being creating formations at the physical, vital, and mental level to carry forward into a next lifetime. The mother writes, quote, "When the psychic is fully developed and very conscious, when it becomes a conscious instrument of the divine will, it organizes the vital and the mind in such a way that they too participate in the general harmony and can be preserved. A high degree of development allows at least some parts of the mental and vital beings to be preserved in spite of the dissolution of the body. If, for instance, some parts, mental or vital, of the human activity have been particularly developed, these elements of the mind and vital are maintained even in their form, in the form of the activity which has been fully organized. As, for example, in highly intellectual people who have particularly developed their brains, the mental part of their being keeps this structure and is preserved in the form of an organized brain which has its own life and can be kept unchanged until a future life, so as to participate in it with all its gains. In artists, as for instance in certain musicians who have used their hands in a particularly conscious way, the vital and mental substance is preserved in the form of hands, and these hands remain fully conscious. They can even use the body of living people if there is a special affinity, and so on. Otherwise, in ordinary people in whom the psychic form is not fully developed and organized, when the psychic leaves the body, the mental and vital forms may persist for a certain time if the death has been particularly peaceful and concentrated. But if a man dies suddenly and in a state of passion with numerous attachments, well, the different parts of the being are dispersed and live for a shorter or longer time their own life in their own domain, then disappear. The center of organization and transformation is always the presence of the psychic in the body. Therefore, it is a very big mistake to believe that the progress continues, or even, as some believe, that it is more complete and rapid in the periods of transition between two physical lives. In general, there is no progress at all, for the psychic enters into a state of rest, and the other parts, after a more or less ephemeral life in their own domain, are dissolved. Earthly life is the place for progress. It is here, on earth, that progress is possible during the period of earthly existence, and it is the psychic which carries the progress over from one life to another by organizing its own evolution and development itself." End quote. Reference, Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, the Psychic Being, Soul, Its Nature, Mission, and Evolution, Section 3, Growth and Development of the Psychic, pages 85 to 87.